I wish that I was starting in 2021 instead of 2007. The internet has made it so much easier to go from 0 to 60 so fast. Like the people that we talk to that are like, yeah, I'm only charging $4,000 for my wedding films and I want to get up over 5 or 6, and I'm like, well, how long have you been doing it? And they're like, well, like a year and a half. And I'm like, I didn't charge over $3,000 until like my 9th year in doing this.
And then I was like, oh, she's going to think that I'm kind of a fraud here because I'm preaching these things and saying these things on our podcast, and that's not her experience. We want to make great films so that people see, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about when it comes to this stuff. But it's also keeping me in check for how I'm running my business and how I'm doing the things that I'm doing, because I know that other people are like looking at us and watching. I'm gonna get right in my bag. Why you gonna try to get mad? Everybody wanna keep up. Don't you know I move too fast? I'ma zip right past. Drip all on my swag.
Hey guys, welcome to the Wedding Film School show. I am without Jared today. It's just me, but luckily I have two more, we'll say part-time co-hosts. They're not that experienced. They're new to the game, and let's be honest, they got a lot to learn, but they're here to learn from how to do a podcast. So we got John and Nick from How to Film Weddings, which is a podcast. If you haven't checked it out, it's a great podcast for wedding filmmakers. What's up, guys?
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having us on.
Yeah,
thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for filling in for Jared.
Yeah, it's some big shoes to fill. He's a big dude.
Yeah, slacker out there, just out there doing nothing. You know what's funny? Jared shot a couple of weeks ago. He shot 4 days in a row. Can you imagine shooting 4 days in a row?
No, I'm too old for that.
If John's too old, I definitely am too old.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting there. I think this year I'm finally feeling my age. Like,
yep,
I'm finally like out there, and I'm like, bend your knees, and you're like, oh, old man knees. Oh no. So, anyway, you guys, thanks for coming on the show today. If you haven't checked out How to Film Weddings, they got a lot of stuff going on. They got podcasts, YouTube channel, very active Facebook group, a lot of stuff for you to connect with. And why don't you kind of give people a summary really quick? Tell everybody, if you haven't checked it out, tell them about How to Film Weddings.
Nick? We never know. This is the thing that Nick and I do on our podcast. It's like you, me, you. Go ahead, Nick. Tell them a little bit. I'll fill in the gaps.
Okay. How to Film Weddings is a wedding education filmmaking channel. We have a podcast, we have YouTube, we have courses and mastermind, we have a lot of stuff going on. But whenever John and I started this in 2018, is that what it was? 2018. Yep. The whole purpose of it, the goal of it is we really wanted to elevate the wedding film industry. For so long it's been seen that the wedding film is, the last add-on. It's the thing that people do if they have money. And so we wanted to help educate filmmakers to present themselves in the best light so that they could know how to sell, so they could know how to run their business, so that they could know their numbers and, be in this for a long-term thing. I've been doing it since 2013. John's been doing it since 2007. So, there is longevity in it if you kind of know how to do it and how to do these things. And so that was our big goal in starting How to Film Weddings, is to elevate the industry.
Yeah, and the only little things I'd add on is like Nick and I met at a wedding. I knew he was a few hours away. He's in Wichita. I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And so I had a wedding I was shooting. I had him come along. We started talking shop, became friends. In October of 18, we were like, we're going to do this thing. We put out a podcast, and we did not know what it would do to change our lives, but it has grown to an incredible brand. And like, we're speaking all over the country. We're going places, especially before COVID. And like, we've released our courses and done different things. And it's just been like this incredible life-changing thing. And we get messages every day and from people saying, oh my goodness, I made $40,000 this month. I think that was the last message that we got.
Okay, we don't get messages like that every single day.
The last message we got was that.
We did get one that said that. Yes.
But people are saying you're changing our lives.
Messages.
You're helping us be better.
Encouraging messages.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jason.
Definitely.
Yes. So it's been this incredible whirlwind of 3 years. It's like, how did it go so fast? And we're just at the very beginning. We got a lot of exciting things that we're doing and a lot of exciting things coming up.
Hey guys, so we're gonna do 3 questions. It's our awesome game that we play on the Wedding Film School show. Before we get into the meat and the potatoes of the interview. So the first question we always ask is, what is in your kit?
We have one C70 and then a few C100s, 35, 50, 7200s. We have two 7200s. We use practical lights for our lighting, pretty typical audio equipment with Tascams. And then I have a Zoom, what is it, the F6. Yeah, the F6 is our main recorder. And then, kind of normal stabilizing stuff, tripods, Ronin S, monopod, that sort of stuff.
Mine is almost the same, except for I have not spent the money on the lights. I use torch LEDs. I have the C70. My main go-to lens for the day, though, is the 50mm 1.2 Canon L series. I love that thing. And I use my gimbal a little differently than Nick. I have it on and kind of in the room everywhere. And I have a 16-35 on that on a C100 Mark II. So my main camera now is the C70. I've actually officially filmed my very first 4K wedding this year, which is crazy that I hadn't done that. And I'd been charging $10,000, $12,000 for 1080 wedding films. But yeah, my kit's very similar with 70-200s, a 135, 50, 24-70. I have pretty much all the lenses, but I mainly am on my 50 or a 16-35 during the day, 70-200 for some portrait stuff. And yeah, that's pretty much the same as Nick outside of that.
So the next question that we're going to ask you guys is, tell us about a film that you would say represents what you make, what your art is like now.
I just got back my film from a wedding I did in Charleston. Filmed it at the end of April, early May, and I mean, I was there for 3 days. They actually rented a yacht because I suggested they do it. We went out on a boat for a sunset one night. We did walking through Charleston. One day we did the rehearsal dinner. The couple was full of, like, the groom gave this unexpected speech at the rehearsal dinner where he cried right in his bride's face. It was so good. It was so emotional. It was full of fast cuts and energy and beautiful backlit, everything. So that to me was my ideal client mixed with the ideal location. With my ideal camera setup, just all rolled into one, and the response to that film has been insane-o. Lots of new inquiries all around the place because of that film.
Yeah, there's several that immediately pop into my mind. I just got back from a trip to Cabo. That film is I poured my heart into that one, putting that one together. But one that I would say, if I could say is a really good representation of what our brand is or what we want it to be, is literally a week before the world shut down. Last March, I did a wedding for a photographer friend here in town, and it ended up being this micro wedding where the only people that were there were their immediate family. And the bride said, hey, we want something that feels way more like a home video, way more handheld kind of thing. And so, we went there. We used a different camera body to film all the handheld stuff, so it would actually have a little bit different look and feel and stuff to it. So that's one that I'm this is, I think, the best representation of what I would like our brand to look like, moving forward.
Why don't you tell us, how do people find your wedding filmmaking work?
For me, the best place is either going to be on Instagram at Wild Oak Films or YouTube /Wild Oak Films.
And mine would be Instagram at Redeemed Productions, and same thing for the YouTubes.
And finally, tell everybody about this workshop you're going to be putting on. When is it happening again?
August 4th and 5th.
I will tell you all the details. Yes, they are so good. Nick and I have been drumming this up for a while. We are hosting, and we announced it last week, but we're hosting Calibrate Workshop. It's 2 days, August 4th and 5th. We have 15 speakers over a 2-day period of time. It's all virtual. You'll have access to it for 24 hours after, in case your time zone.
Tell us.
Oh my goodness. All right, we got the film poets. I'll just run through them real quick, Nick. Is that okay? We got
yes,
the film
please.
poets, Jay and Mac, Eric Floberg, White and Reverie. Have you ever heard of them? Blink Films, KEJ, Hello Tomorrow, Forestry Films, Filmed by Stanton, Films by Madeline. We have Taylor Petrinovich with Level Up Your Wedding Film Business podcast. Blake, the editor, our editor's talking. Larev Films is doing a special Q&A. Ryan Coral with Tell Studios. And then also we have Sam Jacobson, who has helped a ton with like bookings and things like that. So
he's good.
A well-rounded everything when it comes to color grading, how to edit, how to be inspired, all wrapped up. Each of these speakers are going to talk for an hour. They're going to have Q&A after they talk, so it's going to be interactive. We're going to have a Facebook group where you can interact and chat with each other there. Just trying to connect people, help them calibrate after a crazy year and a half. Nick has been putting together the coolest branding and stuff too. I mean, I'm sure you guys will post some of these graphics and stuff, but it's going to be like just a next level production. It's going to be awesome. Nick, what else do you have to add?
Are you guys going to send us lunch to our houses, like box lunches, so we can all have lunch?
Yes.
Very cool.
Yes, the coffee will be delivered depending on your time zone. Yes,
Very
with that and a nice box lunch with a pickle.
Yeah, one thing I want to add in there, if you're interested in looking up more information, finish this podcast first, but then head over to calibrateworkshop.com. And we have done something with our friends over here at Wedding Film School. So if you type in the promo WFS25, you will get $25 off of your ticket for Calibrate. So that's calibrateworkshop.com, WFS25.
So for you guys, obviously you're still wedding filmmakers, which I respect, because I kind of hate it when someone like starts educating people and they don't even do it anymore. Even though I think on some level that's going to be what happens to all of us as our bodies decay and fade. but I do think it's cool that you guys are still making wedding films. You're still in the game. So as wedding filmmakers, you guys have probably seen, how has doing the podcast and kind of growing your platform in that area affected the films that you've been making?
So that's a really interesting question. I wouldn't say that there is, for me, like more pressure to create something that people will like look up to or whatever. But there kind of is a little bit, I mean, it's we want to show that John and I are still actively working in the, wedding film community. It's something that we want to, we believe that if we are going to teach on this and educate on this, that we need to be in it and involved in it. And so, but with that, if we're, maybe where I'm going with this is I start talking and then I figure out where I'm going.
Podcast special. That's a podcast
right,
special.
Exactly. We both really want to show, like, practice what we're preaching. One of the things that we talk about is especially with inquiries and, this kind of stuff. And there was a time when we were just, so busy earlier this year. And we actually got an inquiry from a couple that was getting married that had listened to our podcast. She was a filmmaker. He was in the industry somehow, but not a filmmaker. And, they inquired and we're like, in a perfect world, someone inquires with me. I respond to them within an hour. I hopefully have a phone call with them that afternoon and all this stuff. And after it all said and done, it was like 4 days later before I was able to get back to her because I was busy and I saw it and I kind of forgot about it and, all this other stuff. And then I was like, oh, she's going to think that I'm kind of a fraud here because I'm preaching these things and saying these things on our podcast, and that's not her experience. And so while I want my films and my work to be, next level for my couples, and that's still from a film standpoint, it's we want to, serve our clients really well, but we want to make great films so that people see, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about when it comes to this stuff. But it's also keeping me in check for how I'm running my business and how I'm doing the things that I'm doing, because I know that other people are like looking at us and watching us.
So I'm the exact opposite, and I realized this. So when Nick and I started the How to Film Weddings brand, like, I really needed help.
We
with
didn't
my
start
shooting.
the How to Film Weddings. Yes, we.
I thought you said
I had a Freudian something, and I really thought you said wedding film school, even though you said how to film weddings. Okay,
I mean,
you can talk now.
when we started it though, I needed major help with my shooting and editing. Nick needed major help with his business. And so like to me, I'm not concerned at all about people wondering if I'm a fraud with my business. I am like I have the anxiety and the fear about like people seeing my work and being like, how is that guy running a podcast? His work's not. So it's I've had to completely up my game when it comes to shooting and editing. And I think that's how Nick feels about running the business. And that's why our podcast is done so well, is like I feel like I really have a lot, and was really focused on growing a really solid business, and Nick was so good about the shooting and the editing, and so together we've helped each other grow alongside thousands upon thousands of other filmmakers all at the same time, because I have genuine questions like, Nick, how did you get that color? What did we do that? Like, show me how to do that. And Nick is like, hey, I'm sorry, like I don't have money in my bank right now and I need to understand. Like there's been vulnerable real conversations, especially early on, where it's like, hey Nick, I'm still shooting on auto white balance, don't tell anybody, or
don't do that.
Well, I don't anymore, luckily. But now my films, I feel like the most recent ones that I've produced are finally like what I've been envisioning for so long, but it took educating myself and making myself vulnerable, and that's what we preach all the time on our podcast, to do that.
There's a way that wedding filmmaking is some of the most pure art, because it requires like very little structure to do properly or to do effectively, like to get like somewhere. Like you can get 60-80% there not really knowing what you're doing in a lot of areas. Like you, as long as you know what you're doing in like a couple of the areas, you can probably snake your way, like, oh, I'm using auto white balance, or I don't know how to do. It's like, I think really what we're ultimately talking about as educators, and when we're looking at our own businesses as creatives, but also as business people, is we do film critiques every week, and oftentimes they're good. People submit a film, and I'm like, this is a good film. And so I'm not going to tell you how to make it acceptable or saleable. It is saleable. It is acceptable. The couple will love it. Really, ultimately, what wedding film education, of course, there's that entry-level stuff, but a lot of it is next level. How do you next level yourself? How do you create something that's more profitable, that's more sustainable, that's easier to run, less stressful? And so I love that. I love what you guys are saying there, and it's interesting because I can totally see in your own journey, knowing you guys a little bit, like how that would affect you guys in terms of like, knowing how you feel when you're like, I just shoot on the C100 like for a long time. It's like, I can see how like when everybody's like, what's the best camera profile for the A7S III? You're like, meh,
I still have no idea what it is.
Yeah. The best one is probably Cinetone. That's probably the best one based on what I see. What is up with Sony shooters, by the way, and asking about camera profiles every single week?
I'm not going to fall into that trap. Sony's great. If you like Sony, it's a great camera, but Canon is better.
Oh, I wish it was better. I'm a Canon guy, but at the core, like, I'm starting to just come into the acceptance that I should buy that camera. But anyway, moving on. I think like one of the cool things about becoming more successful at anything is that you can do more, and that's cool. But one of the things that people don't think about is oftentimes like it doesn't solve all your problems. And so, a lot of the people we're talking to as on Wedding Film School are new to the industry, and we get this comment a lot like, oh, if I could only buy this camera, someday I'll buy this camera and I'll make great films. If only I could get this, if only I could get that. What about people? Why do you think people always don't understand that, like, wherever you are, you need to go somewhere else? Wherever you are, there's always going to be some challenge you have to face in wedding film. In life in general, but we'll keep it to wedding filmmaking so we don't make this a 2-hour-long podcast.
I really think that that's just a kind of human nature thing. The grass is greener on the other side. Like that's kind of a lot of people's mentality kind of about everything. We think, oh, as soon as I get this camera, I'll make it. As soon as I do a destination wedding, I'll make it. As soon as I, whatever. And I think a real problem that I know that I have had is, or a big obstacle I have overcome, is that I don't need, to buy new gear to be a better filmmaker. Someone commented on our stuff on one of our posts recently, and they were like, you guys say that camera gear doesn't matter, but obviously does matter, because my camera doesn't do 60 frames per second in 4K and yours does, and that's a big jump in. And while I agree with that, there is something to being content with what you have and making what you have and growing along the process. Something that I have, when it comes to gear, something that I really shifted my mind was to ask myself two questions. One, does this piece of new gear help me serve my clients better? And two, does this piece of gear help me on a wedding day? Okay. And if the answer is no to either one of those, I do not need that new piece of gear.
Yep.
Maybe this camera that can do 4K RAW, which I don't know what it is, would make my clients happy. And I think it would, I could deliver something. But does that make my life easier as a filmmaker now that I have to edit 4K RAW? Absolutely not. And so, and everyone is going to answer those questions in their own way. But that was really what helped remove me from the, the gear cycle of always wanting that new thing, of always chasing the camera or the lens or the whatever. I mean, last year we got the C70, but as I've been talking to my wife, she's like, we're editing her B cam and she's basically an A shooter too. So we're mixing up C70 footage and C100 footage. And she's like, there's not a noticeable difference in what we're delivering. And so she's like, why do we need to spend all of this money on this new camera when the other ones are still, even though it's a 6-7-year-old camera, are still producing very quality stuff. So I think that's just a personal thing that everyone needs to work through. I feel like I rambled a bunch.
Well, one of the questions I always like to throw out internally with us is how does it affect my, not just on the wedding day, but my post-production? Because post-production is where the money is lost. People are losing money in post like crazy. We're all shooting the same exact length of a wedding day, pretty much. Nobody's losing money on a wedding day. Not maybe, but mostly people are spending hours and hours and hours. And I think it's so funny that we are so attracted to, it's the all sizzle, no steak, type thing. Is like everybody wants to do the sexy thing. Nobody wants to do the disciplined thing. And that's sometimes buying hard drives instead of lenses. That's sometimes investing in a 10 gig network in your office instead of buying a new camera body. These are the things that will actually improve your scalability, improve your profit margins, actually make a difference in your clients. You know what your client will really be pissed about? It won't be when there's not enough slow-mo. It's like, all my hard drives crashed and you have no wedding. That's what they'll really be ticked about. So I think that's goes into one of your number one messages. One of your number one messages on your show is, we've talked about it before when we did an interview, and I think it's a great thing to bring up again, which is this concept of, slow and steady, building your business in a patient way. It's interesting. I want to hear you guys' take on this, because my experience was a little different than that. But I think over time it ended up being the same. But when I started, the first thing I did, and this is just my personality, I was like, I want to do this. Okay. I'm going to make wedding films because there's plenty of money here. I can do this. That guy's making it. I could definitely do it. So I just go to the store. I had a credit card that for some reason gave a 24-year-old $10,000 credit limit. No idea why. I had nothing to deserve it. Walked in there, said, I want this 7200. I want this kit lens, and I want this 16-35 and a Canon 5D Mark II. Walked out the store. I'm a wedding filmmaker overnight. I wasn't, but we just grabbed the gear. I just bought it. And then within the first 1st year, we had paid it all off and everything. But when you talk about slow and steady, did I do that right?
I like this question, and before answering, I want to tack on to kind of what Nick was saying on the last question, because I think it all comes down to mindset. I think that your mindset wasn't with that purchase, it wasn't if I could have this gear, I would. It's no, I'm gonna go my mindset is I'm going to go kill it and make money doing this business. This is the tools I need. It wasn't like 2 months later you were like, oh no, I need the 5D Mark III because it came out and I can't do my job well unless like you had a tool in your hand at that point. So I put things on, like I did bridal shows on credit cards when I first got going. I remember like doing a bridal show and like handing over a credit card and being like, oh my gosh, like this is the last $1,000 to my name. I have to book a wedding. I have to, and like, but I was all in on this is what I want to do. This is my passion. This is where I want to go through. But a lot of people I think get it backwards. It's similar to like, I'll be a giving person once I have more money. Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, you should be a generous and giving person before you have a lot of money. Like that's backwards. The world will kind of tell you like this, once you get rich, then you can be a generous person. Or once you have the big weddings, that's when you can, and it's like, nope, you have to have that mindset first. I'm a generous person. I'm going to give something besides maybe a dollar bill before I have a dollar to give. Or I am a filmmaker before I have the Blackmagic this camera or the Arri this or whatever, gear. It's like my mindset was, I'm a real business. I'm going to take real care of these couples, and they don't know the difference right now between a 5D Mark II and a 5D Mark III. This is what I have in my hand, and I'm going to kill it with this and just get stuff done with this until I have extra to upgrade. And then, like how Nick said with the C70, I'm shooting on it. I love it, but I have not had like people are saying, oh my goodness, like the color is so much better. I like I know the differences, but they're subtle at this point, and that is not what made me or broke me when it comes to being successful. So to answer your question, I don't think you did it wrong. I don't think there's a right. I think it's for each and every person. But if your mindset was, okay, 4 months in, now I need 10 grand more of debt so I can, or I'm not going to be a filmmaker. Oh, I see John over there with that camera, and if I had his camera, I would be. It's a mindset thing. It's backwards.
Yeah, and I think at the core, like the actual, I didn't want to like ruin it, but the actual what I did was said, oh, here's my break even. All I need to sell is 2 weddings. Here's the resale value of the camera.
Yeah.
The key with everything is like, it's interesting with artists, right? Is like artists are not naturally strategic. Like in terms of like this stuff, like, and there's every once in a while you have a few people, but like in general. So I guess we talk about this a lot. I'd love to hear from Nick on this because I feel like you've probably experienced a lot of growth in this area. And so what's it like to go from being like maybe a straight up artist, and then what's the big shift people need to make to start being a strategic business person?
That's a good question.
That's a really good question. The first thing that I would say that has really, really helped with that is just investing in education and the relationships that I have. Specifically from a business standpoint, I know that my relationship with John has been something that has been like a pinnacle in that swing from going, from what I was charging and running my business and how I was doing all that to what I am doing now. The first time John and I met, I was shooting with him, and it was I don't know, he had made somewhere in the 8 to 10 range for this wedding, and I had just booked a wedding for like, I don't know, around $3,000. And, he told me, he was like, dude, if I could edit and shoot the way that you do, I would be selling that for $12,000 or $13,000. Like, that was a conversation, and I was like, I mean, it kind of got me a little bit. I mean, it made me feel nice because he said, hey, your films look great, but just how you're running your business, something needs to shift and something needs to change. And I remember at that time, this was, beginning of 2018, I was having kind of a lull in bookings. And so I had my, $300 package, and I gave him a $500 discount just so I could get a booking. So it's $2,800. And then, fast forward almost a year later, and now I'm charging, I booked a wedding for over $5,000. And so, and I attribute that to the relationship that I'm building, that I was building with John. Something that I heard it's kind of popped up, and for the most part, I think it's pretty true, is you should only really take advice from people if you are willing to switch lives with them to an extent, right? Like it always seems to me like the people that I would talk to when I was having money trouble or whatever were people that were also in money trouble. And so they were giving me advice on how to, get out of this situation. And that doesn't make sense. And that's kind of what we seem to do, is we have this frame of reference of, well, these are my peers. These are the people that I know, instead of seeking out people that are doing what you want to do really well. And so if I would have gone to another, artist type person that is like, I am not going to sacrifice my work, or I am not going to do this, or I don't care about the money. Like, money is a motivator to them. Like, I would not be where I am today in my business because their perspective is differently. And I knew, hey, I'm full time now. I want to make money from this. So I need to talk with somebody and get encouraged by somebody that takes the business side very seriously. I was kind of long-winded, but hopefully that answered that.
I'm long-winded. You're nice. I work with a lot of young people, and we have 28 people on the team this year, and that's been going on for around 10, 11 years. Who knows how long now? But when I meet some kid who says, I don't care about money, all I care about is art, I know that I'm going to be giving them money for a long time, because they're never going to be able to make their own, And I think at the end of the day, it's funny because I came from music, right? I toured in bands. I wanted to be a professional musician. That was what I wanted. And that's actually the worst possible way to make money, by the way. But it was fun. But one of the things that, like, I just had to break myself of is like this, like, oh, you're a sellout. You're a sellout. You're a sellout. Like this, like, mindset that, like, making decisions based on what is saleable and marketable is somehow bad. And what I've learned over the years is, like, I'm still in the game, though. So, like, you can say whatever you want about people who are making a living, but they're not working at Starbucks anymore, and you are. And so I would say for people out there, like, who are listening and are thinking about going full time, a lot of times you're going to have to make decisions. Because I have a take on the whole pay more, shoot less thing that probably that's actually for much less people than are educated on it, in terms of, like, people are always told shoot less, get paid more. And I'm like, well, eventually the economics and the supply demand and, like, the numbers don't work. It's not infinitely scalable that everyone can shoot less and get paid more. But I do think a lot more people can shoot at all and quit their jobs. Like, there's a lot of people out there who could be making a living. We're at 60% penetration on couples getting married right now, or couples getting married, booking a wedding film. 60%. Like, wedding photographers are 95%. Like, that's not going to go down. That's going to go up. Like, and then what happens? Demand goes up, and then the floor on the market goes up. You're not going to book a decent wedding photographer for less than $2,500, like, anywhere. In my market, probably 4, 5. So I look at that and I go, there's a lot more to go around for wedding filmmakers. So I guess I would say all that to say this. This is my take. This is the best time ever to become a wedding filmmaker. That's my take. What do you guys feel about that?
I wish that I was starting in 2021 instead of 2007. I remember what it was. I remember what it was like being a wedding, a wedding videographer is what I was called a lot. Yes. The videographer. We just want you there for the ceremony, and we want a 45-minute film, and, like, creativity wasn't even a thing. It was a tripod on wheels and big bright light and nothing creative. Animated graphics that look like they're from The Bachelor with rose petals falling before, like, the cursive font that said, like, the ceremony, like, twinkled onto the screen. And now you open up, Instagram, and it's just like these incredible epic motion pictures that we can produce. And so people now, like the 20 somethings, have been watching wedding films since they were 10 years old, and it's just part of their culture. It's like, when I get married, I want like a killer wedding film like this. When I started in '07, it was like they were, they were still little bitty kids. And so like that kind of stuff wasn't even here. You couldn't record audio well, like there weren't Taz cams or Zoom. Like there just wasn't that.
And you weren't respected either in the chain of wedding filmmaker, like, or the chain of wedding vendors. You were like one rung maybe above the DJ.
Like my average booking time, like lead out from a wedding, was like 2 weeks before the wedding. Like it was just, we're getting married in a couple weeks. Oh yeah, we need a video for the ceremony. We got $200 or, and so that has changed significantly. And then there was education, but when I started, like Google was pretty new. So it's like, it's just, the internet has made it so much easier to go from 0 to 60 so fast. Like the people that we talk to that are like, yeah, I'm only charging $4,000 for my wedding films and I want to get up over 5 or 6, and I'm like, well, how long have you been doing it? And they're like, well, like a year and a half. And I'm like, I didn't charge over $3,000 until like my 9th year in doing this. And so like now is it's like the tip of the iceberg for this industry. More and more I am getting contacted before a couple even books a date now. They're like, I want your films. Are you available on this day or this day or this day? Because we're looking at this venue, but we wanted to make sure you were available first. And like mind blowing that would even be a thing. And it's more and more prevalent. Like more and more people are like, well, I have to get a video. It's not just like this luxury that's down at the end of the line. So starting today in a business or being able to go full time has never been easier. And like you said, 60% of couples are hiring a filmmaker. That's 40% of weddings, and there are millions of weddings happening around the globe. And so there's so much open blue ocean, if you will, like for that kind of a thing.
So you guys are you've done a bunch of educational events. You got another one coming up, an online event like we talked about, and then so you've learned a lot about kind of just. You're doing your mastermind group. There's all these ways, because podcasting is education, but it's kind of like this distance education thing where sometimes you're like, is this landing? I don't really know. But then versus like in person, you kind of get the feedback and you kind of know how people are responding. How would you say like educating people on a podcast has really differed from educating people in person or over Zoom in person or whatever, like the actual, that kind of environment?
I was going to say it's, there have been several times whenever I was listening to educational content or watching YouTube videos, and while the person would talk about the subject that I wanted to learn about, they didn't get like the direct question that I had for them. And so as we, have really opened our doors and we've done more mentor sessions and we launched our mastermind earlier this year, we're able to connect with them and get, one-on-one time with them in a way so that they can ask us direct questions and we can answer them and help them in a way that, is next level. So we're seeing them, we're educating in what we're saying, but then we're getting feedback from them and able to, kind of have that conversation rather than with our podcast or, when we create YouTube content, it's just kind of like you were saying, us talking into a microphone and, kind of hoping that it lands, with them when we don't really know for sure. But with those, especially mentor sessions, when we're like, hey, we're giving you the keys to the car over this next, session. You ask us whatever we want. We want you to get the most out of it. So that's what I would say to that.
Yeah, I would add that whenever you're like, so you're right about like the podcasting thing. It's it takes a few months to get feedback, like real feedback on, it's like you're sitting here in a room, like I'm in an extra room, an office at my house. And there's a camera right here, and it's me, and I'm talking to a computer screen. And a few weeks later, this will come out. I'll try to remember what I talked about, and there's this distance. And we've seen, like Nick is saying, we've probably done what now, Nick? 100 mentor sessions or so, maybe.
A bunch. I don't know.
A bunch, yeah. And so like getting that personal connection over Zoom is great. In-person stuff is great. Our mastermind has been unreal, where we basically we teach a group of 50 members every week, but they are interacting via Zoom back with us. And so getting that real-time feedback has been huge for us. And just, it's still so weird to me, like that people know who we are and we don't know them. And that whole side of things, like when we go to things and people are like, I bought your course. It's changed my life. Thank you. Can I buy you a beer? Can I buy you please, like, let me, and we're like, it's a weird thing. I'm a very extroverted person, but I have become introverted in settings where people know who I am and I don't know who they are, which is fun. And I'm realizing how small and connected this industry actually is and how cool all these educators and people are. Like once you get to know people, it's just like, I think people have this viewpoint of what we are or who we are. And then they meet us and they're like, I thought you were going to be kind of more of like a jerk. I don't know. Or I thought you were going to be like shorter or taller. I don't know what, like, and so just this humanizing side of it has been really cool over the last couple of years, like getting to meet some of these people too.
Have you guys found that some of the things you thought were landing with people were actually not the questions they were asking? Like, or do you think people are conditioned by what they listen to ask the question that you've prompted them to?
The one thing that comes to my mind, there's been a few, whenever it came to specific podcast episodes, whenever we had our friend Max Sadek on talking about like Facebook and Instagram ads, like that was something that we knew would be like a big deal for our industry, but he's been on 3 times. And I want to say that at least 2 of not the 3 of our top 10 most downloaded episodes of all time, that was something that really, surprised me in a sense that because he was talking about things that were related to the industry, but weren't like specific for wedding filmmakers. You know what I mean?
I get
you know
that.
what I mean? And so that was interesting. And then another one that just a couple of times, we have done podcasts, where we did one a few weeks ago when the title of it is I Just Want to Quit. And it was just, John talked about the year that he had in 2020 and he opened up and got real vulnerable and real personal. I think that resonated with a lot of people too, because it was the side of business that doesn't get exposed and shown, very much. And I think that people really appreciate the openness and the honesty that we want to show. So and that's another one, while it is part of the business, it's
people are hungry for connections, Yeah.
Yeah.
They are. They're hungry for connections. And I think there's 50,000 people in America who do this job, which is it's very small. It might be, it's probably less full time. I think it's less than 25,000 people who do this job. So everybody is talking to a small group of people, and chances are, just like me, just like you guys, probably you don't know many people who you can relate with. So I think what you're able to provide by providing that space for vulnerability is like a connection with themselves. That's how they feel. That's what they're experiencing. Maybe not to the exact same way, but I think that's what I've seen. And I have also seen, like, when you one of our number 1 downloaded episodes is one about budgeting. We've created all these sheets, and people download these sheets every week, a budget sheet. They download it because it's like people, that's the vacuum, that's the space. And if you're having these questions, I think it's obvious to say to someone like, how do I film weddings? And you take your camera and you take it, that stuff is important. It's obvious. But I train enough 18, 19, 20-year-old kids to shoot weddings to know that that's not the thing. It matters. You need to be able to do it at a serviceable level. But what's going to make you successful or not has more to do with all the intangibles, the hustle, the way you treat people, the way you spend your free time. And all those things, that is what makes you successful or not. So to close out, I wanted to just remind everybody about the workshop and give you guys a chance to kind of tell people why they should be investing in continuing education and why this is so important. And why did you guys decide to do this?
Well, I would love to take this answer.
I will let you.
I say it all the time, but I love the internet. I love what it allows us to do. And over the last, since 2018, we've made just incredible relationships with all of these brilliant editors, shooters, business people, and like to pull all that together over a 2-day period of time where people can log in from the comfort of their home, turn on do not disturb notifications, and hear from people like the Film Poets or Jay and Mac or White and Reverie or Blink or like all these different amazing people that inspire us in different ways. Like, this is something that we like. It's a weird and unique position that Nick and I are in, where we have these relationships, we have this audience of people, and we're able to bring everybody together, like you were talking about, like connect in a way that hasn't been able to be done before in, I think, the history of our industry, to be able to do something like this, and then bring it to people for a couple $100, like an affordable, easy way to connect, grow, get better, and calibrate, just like the name of the workshop. We want people after a crazy year and a half. Like, I mean, there's so much that's happened all around the globe, whether you got shut down or whether you had so many reschedules that you can't see your head from your butt right now. Like, wherever you're at in between there, this is a place for us to get inspired and calibrate and like really refocus where we're going for the rest of this year, but also next year. This wedding boom is incredible. Like, so many people are realizing how important it is to get their vendors early and to book. And so with 15 speakers over 2 days, like, there's nothing better that you can invest in your business that's going to help you grow moving forward. Nick, I said a lot of things. Anything you want to add to that?
If you are interested, head over to calibrateworkshop.com.
That's
the name of the website.
How'd you guys land that one? You didn't have to go calibrate.workshop or something? That's great.
No. I just looked for it. I just looked for it, and it was available.
No one else thought about that? That's crazy.
I guess
innovators, true innovators.
Calibrateworkshop.com and howtofilmweddings.com we got. I mean, how is that available? SEO gold? I'm just saying.
Yeah, well, somebody has fallen asleep on the wheel. That's the thing.
There you go.
So, and you guys
took advantage of
capitalized.
that.
You guys capitalized.
Yes.
So, hey, thank you guys so much for coming on the show. If you enjoyed this, go ahead and do all the YouTube stuff. If you're watching on YouTube, drop a review. That really helps a lot. Hit like, do all that stuff. If you made it all this way through, if you've listened to an hour-long thing, nobody freaking does that on YouTube. So why not just take that extra 5 seconds of effort and just hit the button? It just helps a lot. So thank you guys so much. Thank you for John and Nick for coming on, and we'll see you guys next on the Wedding Film School Show.